So do you reject that philosophy today?
Of kicking your kids out at 18?
Yeah. Do you think, do you like that you moved out, and then if slash when you have kids, would you, what's your attitude towards them living in the house or leaving?
Well, I feel like there's a lot of pros and cons with me moving out early. Um, like with anybody who moves out at 18. Do I regret it? Not entirely. But I do feel like I would have saved a lot of money. Moving out. I mean, staying in.
A lot of
And
money.
will I kick my kids out? No. But you can't stay without a plan. So this is like, yeah, we're gonna figure out how to get you to your own home, but I'm not gonna kick you out until you do. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like that would be. I think I'm a little bit of both, where it's like, baby, you're not staying with me till you grown and married with kids. We're gonna figure out by 25 or whatever, like how to get you your own, or even before that, because you know you could house hack. You could do a lot of things at an early age at 18 that I didn't know. I wasn't aware. I just was ready to go. But if I knew what I knew now, I feel like honestly I could have my kid out by 18 and they'll have their own house, or 20 and they'll have their own house. But if it takes 25, then it takes 25. But 30, that's a little pushing it.
Well, we're going to talk about that because we have some stats coming up later, because with home affordability and the prices of homes and all that stuff, that's why we kind of wanted to talk about this. It's getting more challenging and difficult for kids to move out. Danny, I want to know, what's your attitude towards having kids and moving out and all that stuff, and would you have done it differently? Or
So for me, once I went to college, I told my parents right away I'm not coming home.
Right.
It was just more so like I
you
wanted.
was having a ball.
No. I wanted my independence. Once I got like the small little taste of independence and having my own space, and not really having to answer to anybody or go by anybody's rules, and kind of set my own boundaries and limits of what I wanted to do. That was just like I fed off of that. So it was like, all right, well, after my freshman year, I moved off campus and I figured out the system within school to make sure my refund checks could cover my housing expenses off campus throughout the entire year, rather than, you go to school for one semester, you come home, from the fall, you come home in the winter, go back in the spring, leave in the summer, come back in the fall. I was like, nah, I need to stay in my own place all year round. Like, that's what I want to do. But again, I feel like I was very responsible at that time because I stayed with a full-time job and I was playing sports and I was, doing my college thing. But on the opposite side of things, like Cassandra mentioned, is like, dang, I could have saved a nice amount of money if I did stay home, especially when it comes to paying for college and stuff like that, because I have to pay for that myself. My parents aren't paying for any of that. So, the grants and stuff help, but I still have loans that I got to pay back. So if I stayed home, especially going to rowing in state, I probably wouldn't have had any loans, anything at all.
But it was worth it.
It was very worth it for the experience. It wasn't worth it because now I'm paying for it.
Well, if you had to make the choice, knowing what you know now, what would you do?
I would have sucked it up. Probably.
Ooh.
I would have sucked it up and went home.
You would have stayed home.
Yep. I would have
Oh.
stayed home. I would have sucked it up, just, rode it out for a couple more years, because right at the tail end of my college career is when I started like really paying attention to real estate and understanding the stuff that Cassandra's talking about, like house hacking and things like that. So if I stayed home and I saved that money that I had, then I probably would have had a house in maybe 2016, 2017, rather than now 2023. So it would have made a huge difference on, having an investment property and kind of setting myself up for my, successful financial future. Whereas now I'm kind of backpedaling and doing things in a little bit in reverse than I would have, even if I had like the parents that had the mindset of like, hey, come home, let's have a plan. Like Cassandra said, it wasn't that. It was like, all right, well, what you gonna do? I'm like, I'm 18. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Well, I know. Well, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead on my own. I'll figure it out. You know what I mean? It wasn't any pressure like, oh, you have to leave. But like you had mentioned something earlier about like paying bills and things like that. Once I got my first job at 15, I was paying my cell phone bill. So it wasn't like it wasn't even an option to not pay bills and stay home. No, you had to pay bills. You had to be doing something. And, unfortunately, in African American household, like it's more so like a consistent pressure of like, okay, well, what are you contributing? What responsibilities are you taking on? And like, the older you get and the longer you're staying home, the more responsibilities that they want to push onto you, or they sometimes your parents and even other family members begin to like have a stigma towards what you're doing or who you are, who you're becoming. And a lot of people think like, oh, you being a bum, like you're home, you living off your mom and your dad, you're 20 something now, like you're not out there trying to be successful, this and the third, but yet they don't truly know what success really looks like. Like, just to give you an example, I don't want to go too far on this, but just to give you an example, I got a friend who went to school, D1 football, college paid for, whole 9 yards. Comes home, he's like, he went to school, ends up coming home. He wants to be a photographer. Not wants to be. He's a really good photographer. Staying at home, trying to build up his portfolio, things like that. His parents don't necessarily see the vision that he has. So because he doesn't have money flowing in right away, it's like, well, why don't you use your college degree to go do this and that? He's like, well, if I work a 9 to 5, I won't be able to take advantage of the stuff that I need to do to get my career off the ground with photography, which is his passion, which he wants to do. So he works like, a part-time job here, part-time job there to make ends meet, still having to kick back something at home, but then he's still trying to chase his passion. So he's running in a loop right now, trying to figure it all out. And then every time that he wants to walk out the door and go off on his own and do his own thing, it's like, oh, well, you're supporting, you're helping, don't leave yet. And it's like, it's just, a back and forth scenario. And that's how it is. That would be what it is if I had went home. So it'd be,
I do think that's an interesting dynamic between what Cassandra was saying and what you're saying. And I find it interesting. It's like one culture is where the kid is kind of helping to support the parents in a way by contributing like some money to the household, where Cassandra's attitude is kind of more like, I'm going to get you on the right path earlier. You know what I mean? Rather than, it's more like one sense it's taking and one sense it's giving in a way.
Yeah.
Because Cassandra had a great example of, she said it right out, is community, right? Like in a Caribbean household or a lot of foreigners, they think community first rather than an African-American household. It's like, okay, how do we get ahead? You know what I mean?
As individuals.
It's individuals. Like, it's very individualized because, we're kind of brainwashed to have that individual mindset rather than, back home, for a lot of people, they're like, oh, well, we had our grandmom and she stayed in and helped mom with the babies and mom's here with the babies. And if you're a girl, you don't really do too much of that stuff. But if you're a boy, you do a little bit more. Okay, you bring some money into the house. And, it's certain rules, I guess, within the culture when you come from just a foreign background, regardless if it's Caribbean or even African, Indian, even Chinese, like, you kind of, they all pile that all together.